Imagine yourself on the battlefield. The soil is smeared with blood. Screaming is heard everywhere. But they are only dying by swords. Others are being burned to death. Others are being crushed under monstrous creatures. Others tumble down into concealed pit traps and never stand up again. War in the past was not necessarily a matter of brute force. War in the past was a matter of fear. Armies didn't fight just to beat someone. Armies fought to destroy the enemy. And to destroy, they used some of the most merciless, bizarre, and frightening methods in all of human warfare. Let us look at 6 of the most horrific and worst war strategies in history employed by ancient militias. Strategies so brutal, so uncivilized, they've been heard echoing throughout history more as warnings than as lessons. And then, naturally, the great war elephants of the Mauryan Empire. Imagine this, an elephant, larger than any land animal that currently roams the world, in armor of steel, swords honed on its tusks, charging headfirst through ranks of screaming soldiers. They were not animals, they were tools of terror. The Chandragupta Mauryan and his grandson Ashoka's Mauryan Empire used thousands of war elephants. They trampled cavalry, broke infantry lines, and broke siege lines by brute strength. Their psychological effect was feared. Horses fled in terror. Men fled before the sword was even unsheathed. Wars were often won without raising a sword, and then a few more. To make them more ferocious, handlers would sometimes dope them for battle. If one flared up and turned on its own troops, there was a gruesome failsafe. The mahout, elephant driver, carried a spike and hammer to kill the animal instantly by banging it into the base of the skull. These elephants were not only terrifying to the enemy, they were dangerous to everyone involved, and a strategy that wasn't animal-based, but starvation-based. Alexander the Great battled the Scythians in 329 BCE, experts in mobility and the bow. But they didn't battle him face to face. Instead, they laid waste to everything in front of him: crops, wells, villages, and supply trails. They didn't require walls. They waged war by employing the land itself as a weapon. This was the policy of scorched earth. Starve your enemy, give him no rest or respite, and allow nature to fight your battle. Alexander's soldiers, far from home in a foreign land, began to break down. Starvation and exhaustion pushed them to the point of mutiny. Although Alexander ultimately won, he gained a bitter lesson. Hunger and time can at times be more deadly than swords. And then there was Sparta. We picture Spartans as hardcore soldiers, merciless, disciplined, and unbeatable. However, their control of their society was based on one of the darkest institutions of the Greek world, the Crypteia. It was a clandestine operation. Spartan boys, around 18 years of age, were sent into the rural areas by themselves. No armor, no shield, just a dagger. Their mission: to assassinate helots, the slave class, without being discovered. It was not punishment, it was policy. The aim was psychological warfare, to frighten the helots so that they'd never rebel. Killing the strongest of them meant that any rebellion would never be strong enough to gather strength. For the young Spartans, it was also a test. If you could kill in secret, live off nature alone, and come back unseen, you were worthy to be a warrior. Anything less, and you were disposable. This was not war. It was ritualized, state-sponsored murder. And it worked. But if that's savage, wait till you hear what the Romans did. To pigs. Pigs, yes. Flaming pigs. When Rome was fighting the Seleucid Empire, they faced enemy war elephants, huge, frightening beasts that could annihilate entire legions. So, how did they handle them? Set pigs ablaze, let them loose in the general area of the elephants, and sit back and watch the mayhem. The screams, the fire, the chaos. It was effective. The elephants, terrified at the noise and fire, stampeded, not into the Romans, but among their own men, killing their handlers and casting entire destruction. It is a moment in history where desperation collided with cleverness, and the result was bloody but effective. But all violence wasn't reserved for the enemy. Occasionally, armies turned on themselves. The Roman disciplinary system spawned one of the most evil punishments in the history of war: decimation. If a legion fought disloyally or in retreat, it was not whipped or exiled. Soldiers were instead divided into tens. Then one soldier from each unit, chosen by chance, was executed by the other 9. It didn't matter if you'd fought bravely or cowered in terror. You died if you got the short straw. And worse, by the hand of your fellow troops. The effect was ghastly. No soldier wanted to be the one responsible for the death of a friend, and no one wanted to risk being chosen by chance. Fear kept the lines proceeding quietly, even when everything else did not. Then, lastly, come the Mongols, the ancient masters of psychological warfare. Genghis Khan's troops are legendary for their mobility, speed, and cruel efficiency. But they possessed their most lethal weapon: fear. When the Mongols came to a city, their warriors would issue demands for surrender. If that was not forthcoming, they would lay siege to it. But their methods were new. They hurled plague-ridden corpses over walls to infect. They took hostages and employed them as human shields. And if the city would still not surrender, they killed the citizens, keeping just a handful alive to carry the message: surrender or be annihilated. They did. Asian and European cities surrendered without a fight, intimidated by what they had heard. The Mongols did not just fight, they carried out terror. They inflated their legend more than their armies. These 6 tactics, some horrific in their effectiveness, others revolting in their excess, illustrate how far ancient civilizations would go to become powerful. They occasionally turned to beasts, occasionally to starvation, occasionally to killing their own. But whatever, these tactics remind us war has never been about power. It's always about fear. So which tactic disturbed you the most? The thrust into the head of an elephant, the burning hogs, or the quiet murders at midnight? Tell us in the comments. And if you're interested in more of history's darkest plots and buried secrets, subscribe, like, and ring the bell. Because the past isn't dates and names, it's terror, blood, and fire.